I paid for my sister's education while skipping my own graduation to pay her tuition, only for her to tell our parents, she's just mad because I actually did something with my life. She wasn't ready for me to read her expulsion notice out loud at dinner. "So, what are you doing now, Camille? Still working that newspaper job or something?" Lyra asked with a grin, like it was a punchline instead of a real question. I paused with my wine glass halfway to my lips. "Still writing," I said evenly. "She's just mad," Lyra said to the room, with a smirk that didn't reach her eyes, "because I actually did something with my life." I didn't look at her. I reached into my bag instead and pulled out a folded letter. She wasn't ready. I've always known I was the second priority in my family. I'm not bitter about it, not anymore. But when you grow up watching your younger sister be praised for the same things you were once scolded for, you learn to expect a little less. I'm Camille. I'm 31 now. When this story happened, I was 29, still living in Asheville, North Carolina, and working as a freelance writer and part-time copy editor while figuring out my next move. My sister, Lyra, is 3 years younger. She was always the bright one, the charismatic one, the one who teachers loved and neighbors remembered. If you met us both at a dinner party, you'd remember her. When Lyra got into Columbia University, my parents were over the moon. But financially, we couldn't swing it. My dad had been laid off from his manufacturing job a year earlier, and Mom's work at the dental office barely covered bills. But Lyra didn't stress. Because she had me. At the time, I had just finished college myself at UNC Chapel Hill. I had a graduation ceremony coming up and even an offer to intern in DC with a nonprofit newsroom. It was the first time I felt like my hard work was about to pay off. But Lyra cried. She cried because she couldn't go to New York unless the deposit was paid within a week. She cried because Columbia was her dream and she'd worked so hard. She cried because she knew she was the chosen one, and chosen ones don't get no for an answer. So I gave her what she wanted. I drained my savings, skipped my graduation, and picked up extra hours waitressing so I could wire the money in time. I never even told my professors I wasn't going to walk. I just quietly didn't show up. There were no thank you texts. No acknowledgement. I told myself it didn't matter. That someday, it would all be worth it. That someday, I'd be sitting in the audience watching Lyra graduate, and I'd feel proud that I helped get her there. Instead, 2 years later, I was still in Asheville, scraping by and watching her post curated photos from New York, rooftop bars, art museums, her crammed dorm filled with thrifted clothes and mood lighting. She was living like a main character, while I was busy trying to scrape enough freelance income together to cover rent. And yet, I kept rooting for her. I wanted her to win. Then came Thanksgiving. It was our first full family holiday together in almost 2 years. Mom and Dad had been pestering Lyra to come home, and she finally did, flying in from New York with an oversized suitcase and stories about classes and internships that made her sound like a prodigy. Something felt off. She dodged questions. When my dad asked about her thesis, she changed the subject. When my mom asked if we'd be attending her graduation that spring, she just smiled. I didn't say anything. But I already knew. 2 weeks earlier, I'd been helping Mom go through some of the house bills. She's not great with emails, so I was sorting through her inbox. That's when I saw it, disciplinary action and dismissal, Columbia University. It was addressed to Lyra, but the school had CC'd the home address, too. My chest went cold. I opened it. Plagiarism. Falsification of lab data. An ongoing Title IX investigation for inappropriate conduct involving a TA. Expelled. The date of expulsion? 6 months ago. I sat with that knowledge, unsure what to do. For a while, I told myself it wasn't my business. That if she wanted to come clean, she would. But when she arrived at Thanksgiving acting like royalty, and started mocking me at the dinner table, something in me hardened. The moment came after dinner, during pie and coffee. My uncle asked me what I was doing now, and I started to answer, but Lyra cut me off. She's just mad because I actually did something with my life. Everyone laughed nervously. I didn't. I reached into my purse and pulled out the letter. What's that? My mom asked. I unfolded it slowly, hand steady. A letter from Colombia. Dated 6 months ago. Lyra's smile twitched. Expulsion due to academic misconduct, falsification of data, and pester under investigation, I read, not raising my voice. You could hear a pin drop. Mom stared, slack-jawed. Dad looked like he'd been punched. Lyra's fork clinked against her plate as her hand dropped. Camille, Mom whispered, what is this? Ask her, I said, looking at Lyra. She's the one who's actually done something with her life. Lyra stood abruptly, chair scraping back. You went through my stuff? No, I said calmly. Columbia CC'd the family email. I was helping Mom with bills. Guess it slipped your mind to intercept it. I was going to fix it, she shouted, eyes brimming with tears. You don't get it, I just needed more time. To do what? Lie longer? I said, not angrily, just tired. And then she was gone. She grabbed her coat and keys and stormed out, the front door slamming so hard the hallway mirror rattled. No one said a word for a long time. The silence after Lyra left was deafening. My dad stared at the table, not moving. My mom kept opening and closing her mouth like she wanted to say something but couldn't settle on what. I stood up quietly, picked up my plate and hers, and walked them to the sink. Camille, my Uncle Barry said finally, cautiously. You knew about this before tonight? I nodded without turning around. Yeah. For a couple weeks. Why didn't you say anything? My Aunt Selena asked. Because for a while, I thought I was protecting her. I didn't say that. I just shrugged and said, I didn't want to be the reason this family turned on her. But she took that shot at me tonight, and you snapped, Uncle Barry said. No, I said. I just got tired of pretending. Mom followed me into the kitchen and stood behind me while I ran the faucet. She didn't speak for a long time. I didn't know, she whispered eventually. About the expulsion. I figured, I said, rinsing off pie crumbs. You've still been sending her money, right? She was quiet. Mom? A few hundred a month. I just thought, with New York being expensive, she might be struggling. I nodded. She is. She hasn't been a student for half a year. The realization finally settled over her face like a fog. We've been paying for a lie. I didn't respond. What could I say? She looked so heartbroken. Not just at Lyra, but at herself. Dad finally spoke. I think I need a walk. And he left. Coat on, shoes half-tied, down the steps like he couldn't breathe inside the house. We didn't see Lyra again that weekend. She didn't come home that night, or the next. Mom kept checking her phone, hoping for a message, but nothing came. At one point, she tried calling, and it went straight to voicemail. Back in my old childhood bedroom, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan slowly turning, thinking about all the small decisions I'd made over the years to make her life easier. I remembered when I stayed up all night typing Lyra's college essays because she said she didn't know where to start. I remembered covering for her when she got drunk at a party in high school and missed curfew. I remembered when I gave her my old laptop for school and used a borrowed one with a broken key for my own writing. It was always about her. And I'd been complicit in that. I allowed myself to be useful, to be invisible, to carry the weight and never ask for thanks. I thought about how I'd never told my parents that I'd skipped my graduation to pay her tuition deposit. They still didn't know that part. Maybe they never would. A week after Thanksgiving, I got a text from Lyra. Just one line. I'm not the villain you think I am. I stared at it for a long time. No apology. No explanation. Just her framing herself as misunderstood. I didn't respond. Instead, I poured that energy into work. I updated my resume and applied for every editorial role I could find. I stopped worrying about being stuck in Asheville forever. I stopped dimming myself just to let Lyra shine brighter. 3 weeks later, I landed a contract gig with a regional magazine in Raleigh. They liked my writing style and gave me a chance to contribute a feature. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a step forward. I moved in with a roommate I found on a writing forum, another woman trying to make it in publishing, and we instantly clicked. Funny thing is, once I left home, the family slowly started seeing things differently. Dad emailed me articles he thought I'd like. Mom started asking about my work and even read one of my pieces out loud to her coworkers. My aunt and uncle sent me a Christmas card with a little note, "We're proud of you, Camille." It was small. But it was something. As for Lyra? Last I heard, she moved back to Asheville, renting a small studio near the bus line. No more New York glamour. No more Columbia pride. Just a girl trying to disappear into a quieter version of her former life. We didn't talk much. Every now and then she'd like a post of mine on Instagram. Once she commented "proud of you" under a photo of my byline in the magazine. But she never said the words I think I always needed to hear, "I'm sorry." Time passed, as it does. Quietly, steadily, sometimes painfully slow and sometimes all at once. Winter faded into a damp North Carolina spring. I was building a rhythm in Raleigh: work, deadlines, coffee, rinse, repeat. The freelance gigs were turning steadier, and I finally upgraded to a laptop that didn't overheat when I opened more than 2 tabs. My roommate, Myra, introduced me to her writer's circle, and for the first time since college, I was surrounded by people who spoke the same creative language I did. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every so often, I'd get a message from home. A forwarded email from Mom. A text from Dad with a dry joke. Occasionally, Lyra's name would come up, usually in vague terms. She's figuring things out. She's taking time for herself. She's getting help. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want to know what help meant, not because I didn't care, but because for once, I was focused on my own healing. I was learning not to carry everything. Not to be the fixer. Then, sometime around early May, I got a call from my mother. She never calls. It was late, 9:30 p.m., and I was working on a profile piece about a local jazz singer who'd been around since the 70s. I let it ring once, twice. Then I picked up. "Mom?" There was a pause. "Camille, hey." My stomach dropped. Her voice had that uneven tremble. Like she was preparing herself for resistance. "Is everything okay?" She sighed. "I didn't want to text you about this. It felt wrong." "What is it?" "Lyra came home crying yesterday," she said slowly. "She lost her job." I blinked. She had a job? Yes, at a clothing boutique downtown. Nothing major, but she liked it. Apparently, they let her go. She was late too many times, and there were incidents. What kind of incidents? She got into an argument with a customer. Said some things. The manager said they'd been lenient long enough. I sat back in my chair, pressing my fingertips to my temples. "Why are you telling me this? I thought you should know." "No, Mom," I said quietly. "Why are you really telling me this?" Another silence. "Because she asked about you." That stopped me cold. "She said she's been thinking about reaching out. That maybe she owes you a conversation. A real one." I didn't say anything. "She's not okay, Camille," Mom continued. "She's angry and lost, and I don't know how to help her anymore." "You always did." And there it was again. That familiar tug in the gut. The old reflex to step in, to smooth the path. To put down my own life so someone else could find their footing. I closed my laptop. "I'm not her emotional crutch, Mom. I've been that person long enough." "I know," she whispered. I know, baby. And I hate that you had to be. That startled me. It wasn't like her to say things like that. But it was late, and maybe she was tired too. She asked if you'd meet her. Not at home. Somewhere public. Just once. I didn't give her an answer that night. I spent the next week pretending I hadn't heard the request. I dove into work. I volunteered to help edit another writer's piece. I reorganized my entire closet. But Lyra's name kept floating through my mind, like a stubborn little bird tapping at the window. So I replied. One text. Simple. Measured. If she wants to talk, I'll meet her. One time. Public place. I picked the location, a quiet coffee shop downtown, one with big windows and soft indie music playing on loop. I figured if the conversation turned ugly, at least I'd be surrounded by espresso and strangers. She was late. 10 minutes, then 15. I was just about to leave when she walked in. And for the first time in years, Lyra didn't look like she'd stepped out of a carefully curated Instagram story. Her coat was too thin for the weather. Her hair wasn't styled. No makeup. Just Lyra. Plain. Tired. She saw me, paused, then walked over, shoulders hunched like she was bracing for something. Hi, she said softly. I nodded toward the chair across from me. Sit. She did. There was a long, awkward pause. I watched her try to find her words. I'm not here for a scene, Lyra, I said. So if this is about guilt-tripping or playing victim, it's not, she cut in. Her voice cracked. I just wanted to say something. And I knew I owed it to you to say it face to face. I said nothing. She picked at the sleeve of her coat. I messed up. Not just with school. With everything. I lied, I took money, I acted like I was better than everyone else. Especially you. Still, I said nothing. I thought if I just kept going, eventually it'd work out. Like I could fake it long enough to become the person everyone thought I was. Did you even feel bad? I asked finally. My voice came out quieter than I intended. She looked at me. All the time. But it was easier to pretend it was your fault. That you were judging me. Because if I admitted I was hurting the person who helped me the most, she trailed off, eyes glistening. For a moment, I saw the scared kid she used to be. The one who used to cry when she got a B on a test. The one I used to braid hair for and read stories to when she couldn't sleep. I don't want anything from you, she said. I just wanted to tell you the truth. I took a sip of my coffee. The bitterness was grounding. Okay, I said. She looked confused. Okay? You told me. That's what you came here to do, right? She nodded slowly. Then we're done. She blinked like I'd slapped her. We're done, she repeated, voice catching. Yes, I said, setting down my cup. You told me what you needed to. I listened. And now, I don't owe you my time or my energy anymore. That's all. Lyra stared at me, mouth slightly open like she didn't recognize the person across from her. And maybe she didn't. Because the Camille she remembered would have folded. Would have offered a second chance. Would have taken the scraps of accountability and stitched them into something hopeful. But I wasn't her safety net anymore. I wasn't the sister who fixed things. I was the woman who stopped setting herself on fire to keep others warm. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just looked small. Not in a pathetic way. Just human. Not the pedestal perfect daughter or the too big for this town star. Just a person. Flawed, stumbling, humbled. I stood, slid my chair in quietly, and picked up my coat. For a second, I thought she might say something else. Something like, can we try again, or what happens now? But she didn't. And I didn't look back. That conversation sat with me for days. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't even feel angry. Just tired. A deep, aching tired that lived in my bones, from years of putting my worth in how useful I could be to other people. It wasn't just Lyra. It was how I'd learned to exist in the world. The selfless older sibling. The one who sacrificed. The one who did the right thing because someone had to. But when no one notices the things you carry, eventually you start to believe you're supposed to suffer quietly. That week, I spoke to my therapist, someone I'd started seeing again after Thanksgiving, when all the old wounds came back to the surface. I told her everything. About the expulsion. The family dinner. The coffee shop. She just nodded and said, "It's okay that you didn't offer more." Closure doesn't always mean reconciliation. That line stayed with me. I wrote it down. I put it on a sticky note on my desk. Closure doesn't always mean reconciliation. And that's when I started to feel free. A couple months later, Mom sent me a photo of Lyra in a graduation cap. Not Columbia, obviously, it was from the local community college. A certificate program in graphic design. She didn't make a big deal of it. There was no fanfare. No long speech about turning her life around. Just a picture. No caption. Not even a question asking me to call her. Mom didn't say anything either, just dropped it into a text between a forwarded casserole recipe and a comment about the rain. I stared at it for a long time. She looked different. Not fixed. Not better. But different. Still, I didn't respond. Not because I wanted her to hurt. But because I didn't want to go backward. For the first time in my life, I wasn't standing in her shadow, or behind her, or under her weight. I was standing on my own. And she needed to learn how to do the same. Back in Raleigh, I'd started working on a new piece. A personal essay, something raw, something real. I hadn't written about my family before, at least not in a way that anyone else would recognize. But this time, I didn't shy away. I wrote about the invisible labor of being the reliable one. About growing up as the emotional glue in a family where one child shines and the other holds the ladder. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. The story wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. And that essay, quiet, reflective, honest, got picked up by a major digital publication. Suddenly, my inbox was full of messages from strangers saying, "This is my story too." It was overwhelming, humbling, cathartic. I'd spent so long thinking my story was too quiet to matter. Turns out, quiet doesn't mean small. By late summer, life had taken on a new rhythm. I was writing more than ever, editorials, personal essays, human interest pieces. My name started popping up in places I used to dream about as a student. Nothing huge, but steady. Honest work. Work with my name on it. Lyra, on the other hand, had gone quiet again. After the community college graduation photo Mom sent me, there were no texts, no updates. Occasionally I'd hear about her from Dad. He said she was working part-time doing graphic design for a small local print shop and living in a tiny rental near downtown Asheville. It was fine. I didn't need updates. I didn't need anything from her. Then one day, out of the blue, I got an email from a former professor at UNC who had followed my recent pieces. He mentioned they were putting together a panel at the school, writers and journalists returning to talk to current students about career paths, setbacks, and resilience. He asked me if I'd be interested. It was scheduled for the same week as UNC's fall commencement weekend, which I'd never attended. It felt poetic. I'd be honored, I wrote back. I arrived on campus that Friday, and it was surreal. Everything felt smaller and somehow more sacred: old buildings, new faces, students rushing between classes with laptops and iced coffees. I hadn't been here since I graduated. Or rather, since I didn't. The panel was held in the journalism building, in a room I used to sit in as a sophomore. I looked out into the audience and saw 100 bright faces, many of them looking exactly how I used to feel: hungry, unsure, determined. We each spoke for 10 minutes. The other panelists talked about internships and big bylines and career strategies. I talked about what it means to give yourself permission to stop being someone else's safety net. About being overlooked. About invisible sacrifice. And about reclaiming your own story. When it ended, a line of students formed to speak with me. A few thanked me. One girl hugged me. Another asked for my card. I walked outside into the North Carolina sunlight and felt something lift off me, years of bitterness, of being the support beam in someone else's tower. I didn't cry. I just breathed. That night, I stopped at my parents' house on my way out of town. Mom had texted saying she wanted to make dinner, just us. When I arrived, I was surprised to find the table set for 3. I glanced at her. "You didn't?" she asked, Mom said gently. "I didn't want to make it a thing." I sighed, then nodded. "Okay." Lyra arrived 15 minutes later. She didn't look like a New York fashion student anymore. No curated look. No fancy shoes. Just jeans and a cardigan, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked normal. She greeted Mom quietly and then looked at me. "Hey." I nodded. "Hi." We sat. Ate. Talked about unimportant things, the weather, a new bakery in town, my dad's growing obsession with woodworking. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't hostile. Then, as Mom cleared the dishes, Lyra turned to me. "I read your piece," she said. "The one about being the reliable one." I froze. Okay. It hurt. Because it was true. And because I don't come off great in it. "You're not the main character," I said. "That piece wasn't about you." "Not really." She nodded slowly. "I know. But I just wanted you to know. I see it now. What you did. What it cost you. I didn't, back then. And I still don't know how to say sorry in a way that makes it right." I met her eyes for the first time. "That's the thing, Lyra. You can't make it right. You don't get to rewrite the past. But you can own it. And then you can let me go." She swallowed hard. "I'm trying." "I know. It wasn't forgiveness." "Not exactly. But it was closure." A few weeks later, I got an email from a publisher. A small press had been following my work and asked if I'd consider expanding my essays into a collection. Nothing massive, just a personal, quiet book about family dynamics, emotional labor, and reclaiming identity. I signed the contract. The book was published the following spring under the title "Second Place Isn't a Seat." The day it was released, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. "Your book is in the window of Malvern Books in Austin. Thought you'd want to know. K." I stared at the message for a minute before smiling. People were reading my words. Not because I shouted. Not because I exposed or dragged someone through the mud. But because I finally told the truth. As for revenge? It didn't come with fire. It came with recognition. Lyra had spent years building a life with borrowed scaffolding, thinking she'd always have someone else to steady her. But I took that scaffolding back. And in doing so, I built something better, with my name on it. She saw it. Everyone saw it. And for once, I didn't have to prove anything. I was already living it.